his skill set, it's like pretty varied. So like had it not been a pandemic year, I think he probably would have had a couple of offers.
I lost the Google internship offer because of the pandemic thing, right? You were my
Yes,
recruiter, I remember.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, exactly. I mean, there are resources out there. Take everything with a grain of salt. Like it's the internet.
totally agree. Yeah, be safe. Internet is a weird place. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Open Source Cafe podcast. And I'm super excited for this one because I have Magali here joining us today. And today we talk about candidates like do's and don'ts for technical hiring. So if you're, aiming for an internship or a job opportunity or something like that, what are some of the do's and don'ts and like some of the best practices? And Magali has a lot of experience in that domain, so I'll let them introduce. So Magali, first of all, thanks a lot for joining. Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Kunal, for having me. So I am a technical recruiter currently at Adobe. I have my past experience includes recruiting at Google for the intern team on university recruiting, specifically recruiting software interns. And before that, I worked at NVIDIA as a university recruiter, sourcing on the sourcing side of things, looking for candidates in sort of niche roles. And my current job looks mostly for candidates not in university, which I miss a little bit, but more on the experience side in the ML and research areas.
Awesome. And can you give us like an overview of what we're talking about here today and why is it important?
Yeah. So I've seen thousands of candidates at this point, and mostly on the university side. And I there are things that you learn. They're mostly anecdotal, not necessarily scientific, but I think these are things that would be helpful for folks to know. I do see them a lot of, especially intern candidates, make some of these blunders, and I think they're very easy to avoid. And if you are able to streamline your own process and advocate for yourself, then you have a much better chance of reaching the end and getting an internship or that
Hmm.
NCG role.
Yeah, and most definitely, there isn't like a single path for success. So many ways different people take, and but we'll talk about the obvious things that are like do's and don'ts. So let's talk. Let's just start with like the entire timeline of this recruiting process. So first
Yeah.
thing first, a resume, right? Would like to share like how that stage takes place at
Mhm.
companies, like when the candidate submits their resume, what happens?
Yeah. So let's talk about intern recruiting. I think that's pretty, I wouldn't say universal, but it's there's a lot of standardization there. For a lot of companies, NVIDIA, Google, and Adobe, at least, there is a recruiting season. And I know this is the case for other things and companies as well. And that starts in around August when those internship applications open. And again, this is for mostly for software. I'm sure there are other like PM or TPM internships. Maybe they're on a different season. So this specifically for software, and it runs from August to around February or March, typically. And during that time, recruiters are going through thousands of candidates at Google on, I think, a typical year. They get between 60 and 70,000 applications just for their Suite internship program, which is 12 to 14 weeks. Over the summer, and it's very competitive. And the question is, how do you sort of have your resume stand out? And I think the most one of the most important pieces of advice is to apply early. I've seen a lot of candidates try to wait until they've taken a certain course after their first quarter or semester and then apply. And that I would advise against, because the earlier you apply, the more likely you are to get through the process. These are long processes. They, especially for Google, it takes time to get scheduled. You have to go through your technical interviews. There's a chance that after you go to hiring committee that you might be sent back for another technical interview. So you want to build in time for those sort of setbacks, and make sure that you are sort of giving your application as much time as possible to be considered. And I think that that's applicable for all companies that are sort of
Yeah.
on the August to March timeframe.
Yeah, but now if we're talking about apply early, and on the other hand, we're talking about submit your resume and make it good, people get stuck in this dilemma. I'll apply a little bit
That's right.
later because I'm like making edits in my resume.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend to them?
Yeah. So you can always send your updated resume to your recruiter. Any recruiter who's worth their salt can update your resume in the system. It's not a big deal. Send what you have. Make sure it's good and that it's well formatted. Don't put any graphics, pictures. Just put your skill set from strongest to weakest and your relevant skills. Anything else that you think that we should know about, and send it over. Um, I think Kunal, like in my, if memory serves me correctly, like you were an advocate for yourself, and you sent your resume to be updated quite often, and I don't mind at all. Like that makes my job easier because I know that the information is fresh. I don't have to explain something to hiring managers or the interviewers like, why is this outdated? So that is fine. Don't worry about getting that perfect resume, because it's better to get it in. Just get your foot in the door first.
This video is sponsored by Teleport, enabling engineers to quickly unify access to any computing resource anywhere on the planet. Check out the links in the description below to get started. Are you juggling with shared secrets, SSH keys, or hopping between VPNs and multiple access points? Check out Teleport to quickly access your computing resources from anywhere. Teleport allows engineers and security professionals to unify access for SSH servers, Kubernetes clusters, web applications, and databases across all environments. With a unified resource catalog, there is no need to maintain inventories. You can also work together to troubleshoot a problem with your colleagues on a remote server or on each other's laptops, and record these sessions as well using shared sessions. Teleport also provides ready-to-use auth for your internal web applications. Easily implement security and compliance with Teleport to adopt industry best practices for access across all protocols and all environments with minimal configuration. How does it work? Teleport is a single binary which enables secure access to SSH nodes, Kubernetes clusters, web apps, and databases. Deployed as a single binary, it seamlessly integrates with the rest of your stack. Get started with Teleport now and try it for free. Check out the links in the description below for more information.
Yeah, it's never perfect. You can definitely you make iterations over and over and over again. But
Yeah.
still, speaking of a perfect resume, like, can you maybe share some tips?
Yeah. So I mentioned before, I think there's some inclination to make your resume stand out through graphics or make it look different than everyone else's. Um, the best thing you can do to get your resume noticed is to make it accessible. And when I say that, I mean, I want to know what you and your work and your experience are about within about 7 seconds. And if I have to decipher that through like, again, there's a fan favorite, which recruiters really just, I think, don't like across the board, is that sliding scale of coding skills or technical skills. What do the bubbles mean? Like, there are five, like sort of five dots, and like you're on the second dot. I'm not sure how to read that. And you probably have seen what I'm talking about here, and it's just uh, cryptic. So I think write it out. Text should be the only thing that you're really using. Um, it's I think that like one thing that people don't put in, that if they have room for it, is like volunteer projects, especially Adobe, Google, NVIDIA are big on knowing that you're more than just your code.
Hmm.
We want to know that you are sort of a complete whole person, that you're developing yourself outside of your technical skills as well. If you have room for that, put it in. Like, we want to know about it. If you don't, stick to the more critical real estate of technical skills and letting us know what you've done.
Yeah, totally agree with that. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about like after the resume gets shortlisted and stuff. What is like the next step? For every company, this may be different. Like,
Mhm.
and Google has like the initial interview, then phone screen and stuff, then that coding round. So how does it work?
Yeah, so I'll speak to Google's process because that's probably the one that I know the best. But so say you go through your technical interviews, you do well, and you head to hiring committee. Hiring committee is comprised of seasoned engineers who have been reviewing resumes for both experience in university for years. They all are required to have actually hosted or mentored an intern previously, so they know what they're doing, and it's such a fascinating process to sit in there as a recruiter and sort of see the consideration process. It's really a privilege, and you learn a lot about what they are looking for in candidates. Personal projects, very important to a lot of these hiring committee members. They, especially for sophomores, freshmen who are applying, those are going to be really important because you're not necessarily going to have had a previous internship. So making sure you're doing those personal technical projects, and being active on GitHub, also very important. So after that, hopefully a candidate passes through with recommendation to hire from the hiring committee, and you go into a pool of other candidates, and it's a real mix. It's master's and bachelor's students. PhDs are typically in a different pool. And basically, you're up for consideration at that point for different projects that Google is hosting for that following summer. So hosts, as we call them, hiring manager hosts, can go in and look for skill sets that are going to be a good fit to help their project out. Does everyone get matched? Definitely not. I don't know what the odds are. I would say probably typically it's like a 50-50 shot at best. Sometimes it's less. During pandemic, probably was less than that, unfortunately. But there are a ton of projects, and they're varied. They're take all sorts of skill sets. I would say, like Kunal, for example, like his skill set, it's like pretty varied. So like had it not been a pandemic year, I think he probably would have had a couple of offers. But
Yeah.
you have
So I lost the Google internship offer because of the pandemic thing, right? You were
yes.
my recruiter, I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it was painful for everyone. I think it was
Everyone, I think every international applicant lost it.
Yeah, it
North
was
America.
it was, I think the majority, unless they were already in the States. And it was just, it's like one of a million different reasons that COVID has been terrible. But I think in terms of skill set, typically Google, having a cloud-based sort of skill set is going to be very valuable because that's what their focus is on. NVIDIA, everything, like they range pretty well, right? So having embedded hardware, software, C++, if you have C++, even if you're pure software, you're going to be fine at NVIDIA. Adobe is apparently also, we're big into C++, just recently learned that. And then also having those sort of cloud skill set, very important. Also doing more on the AI ML stuff as well. So you sort of target your company, like make sure it makes sense for you to be applying to a company, because they're going to value your skill set, and that they're going to grow it while you're there.
Yeah. And no matter what happens, see, even if you don't get in, you definitely learn a lot from the process. Like I learned a lot of things. I saw like how recruiting happens and how sort of questions they ask in like coding rounds and all these other things. So it was definitely a great experience. Met a lot of nice people like Magali and my interviewers and stuff. So it was very fun. Cool. So let's talk a bit more about the preparation of like interviews. I know we all know data structures, algorithms, and stuff, but you mentioned something, in our previous call, the STAR interview method. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So this is something that Google is really big on, is the STAR process, which is situation, task, action, result. And I'll say that again. It's situation, task, action, results. So when you're going into interviews, um, mostly behavioral, but I would still say like maybe this is relevant for some technical interviews as well. That's how you should structure your answers, because I've just had so many candidate screens where I'm talking to a candidate and I know they're nervous and their answers are just runaway and they will just talk for like they really answer my question in about 30 seconds, but they keep going. It's just like a bit of a train wreck. And I always feel bad that I have to sort of cut them off. If you sort of stick to that STAR framework, it's much easier for recruiters to get what you're about, for hiring managers to get what you're about very quickly and concisely. So that's really how. So let me just give a quick example. If some There's always going to be behavioral questions on an interview, and even if they're masked as technical. So if you, for example, they're going to want to know, tell me about a technical project that you led. So here's where you lay out the situation. What were you presented with? Like, what problem were you solving for? And that the situation and task can sometimes be mixed. So try to consider that. Like, this was your assignment. This is what you were solving for. This is how you did it. What tools did you use? What technical tools did you use? And also, how did you gather your team, if you were leading a team on this, to help out with it? And then what did you like? What was the impact? Like, did it solve? Did it work? It doesn't necessarily have had to succeed for you to have learned something from it. It could be a failed task as well. A result is both failure and success. So
Yeah.
I think people should structure their answers in that way. It probably won't lead you wrong.
Even if you're saying something wrong but communicating, so the one of the worst things you can do is be quiet and have a 2 minute long silence during the interview.
Yes.
That's not good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And also, like, if you do that, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, Kunal, is like, if you're quiet, not only do they sort of wonder about your communication skills, but there's some interviewers who have experienced folks cheating on technical interviews, and if you're quiet, it's a little suspicious. So just keep talking, talk it out. Even if it sounds like you're babbling, like, they want to know how you're
Yeah.
getting to the end. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be right. And ask questions along the way.
Yeah.
Like, if you
Yeah.
are lost.
Most of the time, yeah, most of the
Go
time
ahead.
they'll guide you. Most of the time they'll
Yes,
guide you.
absolutely. Yeah, they're there to help you. They want you to succeed. Like, I would say these interviewers are like typically trained to help you. They're not there to hinder you. So just listen to them and then ask those questions.
Most definitely. So it's not just about getting the right answer, it's also about the process.
Exactly.
All right.
The
You
journey.
mentioned about communicating, but when we were talking earlier, in one of the do's, you mentioned that it's okay to over communicate. Now, what do we mean by that?
Yeah. So I think Kunal was a really good example of this. So Kunal and I were in touch a lot during his process at Google. And so first of all, it makes you stand out, because it shows your recruiter that you care about your process and that you're invested in maintaining it. Um, I think the more a candidate communicates with you, the more passionate they are about getting that role. The candidates that are typically more quiet are the ones that are looking at a lot of different companies and are maybe moving forward with someone else. Check in with your recruiter. Recruiters at Google, at Adobe, at NVIDIA have so many candidates. At the top of season at Google, I had over 300 candidates at a time. That's a lot of people to keep updated at every step of the way. It is our job to do that, but is it going to happen as regularly as you may want? Maybe not. So take the initiative, be nice about it, and say, hey, just checking in on how things are going. yeah, just also in your communications, don't assume that your recruiter is like out to get you and has purposefully dropped the ball. That is almost not ever going to be the case. Just give grace where grace is due, and
Yeah.
be your own
If
advocate.
you want,
Yeah.
if they weren't interested, you wouldn't be in the mailing list.
That's right. Correct.
Why would they waste their time if they were not into you?
Right. Yes. I mean, at Google and at Adobe, like though candidates are not taken unless we're interested in them. And again, for Google, for my own rate, I probably would choose about 60% of candidates that come in. For the other 40, I don't feel are qualified or ready yet. I'm particularly picky. Every recruiter is different, but again, at the end of the day, the recruiter is choosing their candidates.
This video is sponsored by Datree, a tool that you can use to prevent Kubernetes misconfigurations from reaching production. Using Datree, you can catch misconfigurations in the development phase and set or create policies to receive failure alerts. It's useful for different stages of deployment and helps you measure resource usage by applying mandatory labels to workloads. 10,000 plus engineers are already using Datree. Check out the links in the description below to get started today.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, cool. And let's talk a little bit more about when we are applying to opportunities and stuff. How important of a role does a referral play? And when we're talking about referral, we're talking about networking.
Yeah, networking is so important. A referral is important, especially at the bigger companies where there are just so many candidates. Referrals will get you further ahead. Typically, most companies have an SLA, which is like a sort of window of time that you have to get back to a referral candidate, versus just a regular candidate who's applied, has a longer window of time. So it's 2 weeks versus 3 or 4 weeks. I would building those relationships early as your freshman, sophomore is going to be very important. When I see a referral that it comes in from a family friend and they have no sense of someone's technical ability or leadership ability, it's hard for me to do much with that, because it really isn't endorsing anything that's going to be necessarily helpful besides like sort of building an old boys network, which I don't endorse at all. So make sure that your referral is someone that knows what you can do and can speak to that, because especially if they're an engineer at Google and they can talk to your abilities, they're gonna possibly be your saving grace. Like if you're on the edge of a technical interview and the hiring committee is like not sure, but they go to your referral and they see that your referrer has sung your praises about your coding or algorithms, then that's probably going to help you get it to the next step. So build those relationships early on. Reach out to people that you know are interested in the same things. LinkedIn is a great place to do that. Just try not to get distracted by coming across any random profile and reaching out to as many people as you can. Do your homework, like network with the people that it makes sense to network with. Because if you don't, we'll know. Like it's hard to, like Kunal, like would you ever reach out to like a hardware engineer at
I
Google?
know relatively very few hardware engineers. I know like just 2.
Right, because like you've been targeted in your networking, and that is how to do it. Like don't waste your time, don't waste other people's time. Find your people and build relationships with them. Google and Adobe, they all have a number of programs where you can sort of do that without having a full internship, and sort of build towards an internship and hopefully full-time role once you get out of college.
Yeah, so networking is definitely helps quite a lot. And it helped me get my like current role that I'm in right now. So The Google one didn't work out, like via that I got to know so many people. They referred me at other places and stuff. So many opportunities. Keep trying. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the mistakes people make, so like the don'ts. So some people have this thing called it, like I just want to work for this company when I graduate because this is the measure of success.
Don't do that. Like, please don't do that. I know that I hear this so much, and I see it so much on LinkedIn, especially. I think it's pretty pervasive that, like, X company is my dream job. And I think it's really poisonous to set yourself up for that. Maybe you're going to go straight from college, or your first internship will be for your dream company, which is often a FANG company, or now a Mang, I guess. Facebook is
Yeah,
Meta.
manga.
Doesn't have the same ring to it, less threatening. But a lot of people are not going to go that way, and that's fine. Your success is going to be about like what you achieve and not about where you achieve it.
Yeah.
A lot of smaller companies are better places to make your mark. Like when you're interviewing, if you're on a well-established team at a well-established company, it's going to be hard to stand out there, especially as an intern, where you're like sort of the lowest, on the totem pole. So success looks different for different people, and I think the companies that people often dream about, and achieving a position there, getting there and starting to work there, it's often a bit of a pale version of what people think it's like to work there. And I sort of blame social media and movies like The Intern, the internship.
The internship. Yeah.
That did no one any favors.
I mean, it's see that's the point. Like, it's the what is the herd mentality, like,
Yeah.
and it's not a problem. The problem is like someone's like having a dream job is not a problem, but the thing is when you ask these people like why do you want to work at Google, they don't have a valid answer.
Yeah, right. Right. I think
Right.
it's about participating in the culture
Yeah.
oftentimes. And culture at Google is super important. I think things are going to be so different after the pandemic, or as the pandemic winds down. The idea of this like cohesive, everyone on campus culture is no more. Like, no matter how badly Apple, Google, Amazon want that, it's not going to be the same. Things are going to be different now, and it's not going to be as campus centric.
Yep. Yep. Totally agree with that. And sometimes, like, we talked about interviews and stuff. So one more important things that people make mistakes with is they fear failure, right? So especially students, when they apply to an internships, they get rejected a lot because, I mean, students get rejected a lot, right? They apply so much, right? So, and one more thing that happens is not every single company will tell you why you are rejected, and that makes them demotivated. So what would you share?
Yeah, you're gonna mess up. I think, and it's okay to do that. I think this is sort of tied to the dream job thing, which is that like there's one goal. Like a lot of people get into this mentality that there's one goal, and if you don't get there the first time, that you're failed. And and LinkedIn has not helped with that, with people's humble brags of I'm humbled and honored to announce that I'm going to X company for the summer, which is, great. I love hearing those, especially for candidates who have failed in my interviews and gone on to like other great companies. I think those are the best announcements, because I know that those people picked themselves up and they kept going. But that's almost everyone who has those posts. So there's so many rejections, and you're not going to, you have to build your skill through rejection. That's the only answer. Like, unless you are, I mean, I don't know, like that's everyone. That's 100% of people have to fail in some way before they can really understand the process, understand themselves to get to their endpoint. So you shouldn't fear it. You should sort of submit to it and understand it's going to happen, and embrace it if possible. Like, use it as a learning opportunity. And again, unfortunately, a lot of recruiters aren't going to be able to tell you like what happened exactly in the technical interviews, which is so frustrating for us. Trust me. But for probably what are your reasons of liability, we are often not allowed to tell you what went wrong. So like a general email will be sent to you being like, hey, sorry, it's not going to work out. Work on this and this areas. I would say that for almost most candidates, it's going to be about their data structures and algorithms. If you have those down, then you're probably going to be fine. That is the biggest area of weakness that I saw while I was at Google and candidates. Rarely did I ever see someone who was strong in those areas who didn't go on to the final stages of the Google process.
Yeah. So failure is a part of life. Learn from it, and then you can turn it into a good thing.
Yes.
All right. Cool. And also, don't believe everything you read online. It's also very, very, very crucial.
Yes, absolutely. Please don't. Yes. There's a lot of great resources out there. But so the number of times I've had candidates tell me what the process looks like, your recruiter is your source of truth. If you're really unsure about something, ask them to verify it. Like, probably 9 out of 10 times your recruiter is going to know best. Yeah. There are resources out there. Take everything with a grain of salt. Like, it's the internet.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. Be safe. Internet is a weird place. All right. And just one last thing. Your communications with the recruiter, how are those like bounded? Like you mentioned in the previous call, like don't go outside the recruiting process, for example. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So with your recruit, so you need to be nice to your recruiter. Like, your recruiter is going to be the one that is driving the process forward. And if you're not going to sort of respect them as a person and you're not going to follow directions, then it's going to be hard for us to advocate for you. So I would say those three things that are important for candidates in terms of recruiter candidate interactions, which is be nice and respectful, read the directions, and advocate for yourself. If you can do those three things, stay on top of things, be respectful, follow process, read directions. So many candidates would send, I understand, like, especially for Google, we have this very long email talking about how you have to send us times and dates and in certain window. It's a pain to read. I understand, but please send those times in Pacific time. Like, please send more than one date. It's also shows us how well you follow direction, and that comes out later. Like, oftentimes if people send me incorrect information, I'm almost certain they're not going to make it through the process. It's a crazy correlation, but really there is a correlation there. So those are my words of advice for sort of building those relationships with your recruiter and making sure that you're doing all you can to get through.
Yeah, totally agree. All right. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for sharing, Magali. Really appreciate it. And thanks for joining, everyone. Yeah, that's very much about it. Hopefully, you got some nice insights, and will apply those. And good luck for your interviews. And I know it starts around August, but definitely keep applying.